You thought attraction would be enough. You thought charm could carry the conversation. Confidence could control the atmosphere. Words could shape reality. But a female empath does not only hear what you say, she feels what your nervous system is trying to hide. And this is where many men become uncomfortable. Because most people are trained to survive through performance, a polished image, a rehearsed personality, a version of themselves designed to earn approval and avoid rejection. Maybe even you have done this. Not because you are evil, not because you are fake, but because the world teaches armor before authenticity. Yet an empath enters your life like a mirror that does not lie. She notices the pause before your answer, the tension behind your smile, the exhaustion hiding inside forced strength. She hears emotional contradictions most people ignore. And suddenly, the mask becomes heavy. This is the first reason many men struggle with a female empath, not because she is impossible to love, but because she makes emotional hiding difficult. Her presence can feel exposing. You may say you are fine, but your energy speaks of grief. You may act detached, but your silence carries fear. You may perform confidence, but underneath, your soul is asking to be seen. And that level of emotional visibility can feel threatening to someone who has spent years protecting their inner world. A female empath is rarely impressed by status, ego, or performance alone. She searches for emotional truth. And many men have never been taught how to stand inside truth without defense. So resistance appears, distance appears, defensiveness appears. Power struggles begin. Not because she created weakness, but because she exposed what was already unresolved. This is the uncomfortable truth. An empath does not destroy the mask. She simply refuses to fall in love with it. And if your identity depends on hiding behind who you pretend to be, her presence can feel less like romance and more like revelation. Some men do not fear a woman's emotions. They fear a woman they cannot control. And this is where a female empath becomes difficult to handle. Because manipulation survives in confusion. Control survives in insecurity. Emotional games survive when someone doubts their own inner voice. But an empath lives close to instinct. She feels emotional dishonesty before she can explain it. This does not mean she is perfect. It does not mean she never ignores red flags or never gets hurt. But over time, her soul develops sensitivity to emotional distortion. She notices when affection appears only after distance. She notices when silence becomes punishment. She notices when kindness carries hidden conditions. And suddenly, the old strategies stop working. Some men are used to being emotionally chased, used to mixed signals creating attachment, used to uncertainty creating dependence, used to power feeling like love. But a female empath begins to withdraw the moment connection starts feeling like emotional warfare, not out of arrogance, out of self-protection. And this can frustrate men who mistake emotional control for emotional leadership. Because an empath does not respond well to domination disguised as love. You cannot force trust. You cannot demand emotional surrender. You cannot guilt authenticity into existence. Her nervous system reacts to emotional pressure the way skin reacts to fire. It feels unsafe. And many men do not realize something painful. If connection requires manipulation to survive, then connection was never strong to begin with. A female empath wants emotional honesty. Not perfection. Not endless romance. Not fantasy. Honesty. And honesty feels dangerous to people who learned relationships through power instead of vulnerability. So conflict begins. Not because she asks for too much, but because she quietly refuses to participate in emotional games that ask her to abandon herself. This is the second reason many men struggle with a female empath. She may forgive weakness. She may understand pain. But she cannot peacefully stay inside a connection where love becomes strategy. Because to her soul, real love is not control. Real love is emotional safety. There is something many men spend years escaping, not failure, not rejection, themselves. The parts hidden behind distraction, behind achievement, behind emotional numbness disguised as strength. And this is where a female empath becomes unsettling, because her presence has a strange effect. She does not simply enter your life. She illuminates it. Suddenly, the emotions you buried become harder to ignore. The loneliness you silenced becomes louder. The wounds you outran begin asking for attention. And many men are not prepared for this. You may think you are afraid of losing her. But sometimes, what frightens you is what happens inside you when she gets close. Because closeness with an empath often removes emotional escape routes. She notices the sadness behind your anger, the fear behind your control, the exhaustion beneath constant self-protection. And that level of emotional exposure can feel unbearable if you have spent years avoiding inner healing. This is not because she is trying to fix you. That is the misunderstanding. A female empath is not automatically searching for broken people to rescue, but her emotional awareness naturally creates reflection. And reflection can feel uncomfortable. You call it pressure, you call it intensity, you call it too much, but sometimes your soul is simply reacting to truth. Many men are taught to suppress emotional pain instead of understanding it. Keep moving, keep performing, keep pretending nothing hurts. But emotional wounds do not disappear through denial. They wait. And when an empath enters your life, those hidden places may begin to surface. This is the third reason many men struggle with a female empath. Not because she, E, creates emotional chaos, but because her presence often reveals the chaos already living inside. And here is the difficult truth. An empath cannot heal the parts of you that you refuse to acknowledge. Because healing begins at the moment excuses end. And sometimes, the woman you call too intense is simply the first person who made your soul impossible to ignore. Many men are taught to believe that attraction is simple. Look confident, look successful, say the right things, play the role well enough, and connection will follow. And sometimes that works. But a female empath often moves differently, because she is not searching for performance. She is searching for emotional substance. And this becomes difficult for men who are used to relationships surviving on chemistry alone. A female empath may appreciate beauty. She may admire confidence. She may enjoy passion. But none of that becomes the foundation. Because your appearance can attract her attention, but your emo. Chanel depth decides whether she stays. And this is where discomfort begins. Some men are comfortable discussing goals, money, ambition, or image. But emotional intimacy feels unfamiliar. You speak about what you do. She wants to understand who you are. You offer polished answers. She listens for emotional truth. And that difference changes everything. Because an empath is often less impressed by perfection and more moved by sincerity. She notices whether your words match your behavior, whether your kindness survives difficult moments, whether your presence feels emotionally safe. And many men misunderstand this. They assume she is hard to please, too emotional, too demanding, too deep. But depth is not the problem. Avoidance is. A female empath does not crave endless drama or emotional interrogation. She craves connection that feels real, not performative affection, not temporary intensity, not intimacy that disappears the moment vulnerability appears. And this becomes challenging for men who were taught to build identity around image instead of emotional presence. Because emotional depth requires something uncomfortable, honesty, not the polished version, the human version, the one carrying fear, regret, longing, hope. This is the fourth reason many men struggle with a female empath. She refuses to build love on surfaces alone, because to her soul, attraction without emotional truth feels empty. And if a relationship survives only through appearances, she will eventually feel the absence beneath the beauty. Not every distance means rejection, but many men were never taught that. So when a female empath pulls back for space, fear often enters the room. Because most people understand attention. Constant texting, constant reassurance, constant availability. But solitude, that confuses them. A female empath often carries a nervous system that absorbs emotional energy deeply. Crowded emotions exhaust her. Conflict lingers inside her lawn. Generic, heavy environments stay with her even after she leaves. And because of this, she sometimes disappears into silence. Not to punish you, not to create drama, not to play emotional games. To recover. This is where misunderstanding begins. Some men interpret her need for solitude as emotional withdrawal. You assume she is losing interest. You assume something is wrong. You assume distance means danger. But her silence is often medicine. Because an empath cannot endlessly pour from an overwhelmed soul. She needs moments where the world becomes quiet again. Moments where your expectations disappear. Where emotional noise settles. Where she can hear her own inner voice without pressure. And many men struggle with this. Not because they are cruel, but because they confuse closeness with constant access. They believe love should always look available, always responsive, always present, always emotionally on. But emotional closeness and emotional possession are not the same thing. A female empath understands this deeply. She knows that losing herself to preserve connection eventually creates resentment, so she protects her inner world. And sometimes, that boundary feels threatening to men who seek reassurance through control or constant validation. This is the fifth reason many men struggle with a female empath. She does not abandon people, but she refuses to abandon herself. And here is the truth many fail to understand. When an empath asks for space, she is not always moving away from love. Sometimes she is protecting the part of herself that allows her to love it all. Because solitude to her soul is not loneliness. It is survival. There is something many men underestimate. Not her patience, not her softness, not her ability to understand pain, but her limit. A female empath may give you time. She may give you chances. She may even forgive emotional confusion when she sees effort behind it. But there is one thing she does not tolerate. For long, emotional dishonesty. Not just lies spoken out loud, but emotional inconsistency. The moments when your words say one thing, but your energy says another. When your affection appears only when it benefits you. When your presence becomes conditional, unstable, unpredictable. She feels it before she can explain it. And this is where many men lose her without even realizing what happened. Because she does not always argue. She does not always fight for clarity. She observes. She waits. And then she starts detaching quietly. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, but out of internal alignment. Because staying in emotional confusion feels worse to her nervous system than being alone. You may think she is overreacting, but she is responding to patterns you might be ignoring. Mixed signals, half-truths, delayed honesty, emotional availability that disappears when accountability appears. A female empath does not need perfection, but she needs emotional integrity. He needs to feel that what you show on the outside is not completely different from what exists inside you. And when that alignment breaks too often, something inside her shifts. She stops explaining, stops overthinking, stops hoping, and begins choosing herself. This is the sixth reason many men struggle with a female empath, because she does not stay in environments where truth is negotiable. To her, emotional dishonesty is not just a flaw, it is a signal that the connection is no longer safe for her nervous system. And once safety is gone, attachment cannot survive for long, so she walks away, quietly, clearly, without needing to destroy anything. Because for her soul, peace is not something she negotiates. It is something she protects. Most people think communication is about language. What you say, how you say it, when you say it. But a female empath operates on a deeper frequency. She listens beyond speech. She reads emotional intention. And this is where many men become exposed without realizing it. Because intention is harder to fake than words. You can say, I care. But your energy may carry impatience. You can say, I'm here for you. But your presence may feel emotionally absent. You can say, I understand. But your nervous system may still feel disconnected. And she notices all of it. Not logically at first, but emotionally. Like a silent translation happening beneath conversation. This is why misunderstandings often occur. Some men believe they are doing enough because they are saying the right things. But a female empath does not respond only to language. She responds to emotional truth behind language. And when there is a mismatch, her system reacts. Subtle discomfort, internal hesitation, a quiet step back. Not always visible, not always explained, but deeply felt. This becomes difficult for men who rely on surface-level effort. Because effort without emotional alignment feels hollow to her. She does know. We need perfect communication. She needs sincere presence, a calm nervous system, a grounded emotional state, a willingness to be real instead of rehearsed. And when that is missing, no amount of words can fully replace it. This is the seventh reason many men struggle with a female empath. Because she is not only responding to what you express, she is responding to what you actually are in that moment. Your fear, your honesty, your avoidance, your emotional truth. And here is what becomes uncomfortable. You cannot consistently lie with energy, even if your words are correct, because she feels the gap between intention and expression. And once that gap becomes familiar, trust begins to fade. Not loudly, but silently. And in that silence, she starts to detach from what does not feel real anymore. Because to a female empath, emotional truth is not optional. It is the foundation of every connection she allows to survive. This is the final truth most men misunderstand. Why assume her love is the problem? Too intense, too emotional, too overwhelming. But her love is not the problem. Her boundaries are what change everything. A female empath does not love lightly. When she connects fully. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She invests parts of herself most people never even access in their own lives. And at first, this feels powerful. like being chosen, like being seen, like being understood without explanation. But there is a condition many men miss. She will not lose herself to keep you. She will not erase her voice to protect your ego. She will not silence her intuition to maintain your comfort. She will not abandon her emotional truth just to preserve attachment. And this is where struggle begins. Because some men unconsciously expect emotional sacrifice in relationships. They expect adaptation without resistance, understanding without accountability, presence without emotional responsibility. But a female empath cannot survive in that dynamic for long, because her love is not self-destructive, it is self-aware. She will stay where love is mutual, where honesty is safe, where emotional presence is consistent. But the moment she feels she is losing herself inside the connection, something inside her shifts. She starts choosing distance over depletion, clarity over confusion, self-respect over emotional dependency. And this is not coldness, it is survival. This is the 8th reason many men cannot handle a female empath, because she does not just love others. She also protects the one person she can never abandon, herself. And when love demands her disappearance, she does not fight harder. She steps back, not because she stopped caring, but because she finally remembered something essential. Love that requires self-abandonment is not love that she can survive inside. And in that moment, she becomes free, not from love, but from anything that asks her to disappear to keep it alive. Ending the lesson: if you truly understand a female empath, you stop trying to handle her and start learning from her presence. She is not difficult. She is revealing. She does not destroy men. She exposes what was already unhealed. The real lesson is simple but uncomfortable. You cannot love deeply while avoiding yourself. Emotional honesty, consistency, and self-awareness are not optional anymore. They are the foundation. Because she will not shrink to fit your emotional limits. And if you ever lose her, it won't be because she stopped loving. It will be because she stopped abandoning herself to stay.